500. Ah, c'était sa conférence de presse pour les jeunes. Comme ils font au Conseil européen.
Si tu peux d'ailleurs te préparer avec ça, pour prendre le bon accueillir.
Je suis parfaitement mon hétérosexualité, monsieur. Non, non, on se demande surtout. Ah oui, oui, on se demande pourquoi la Rome doit être plombée. Je sais pas.
De quoi?
C'est chaud apparemment. On se demande comment techniquement ça peut se faire si la Rome remonte au-dessus de la.
Parce qu'elle est coincée dans sa chaussure.
Peut-être aussi.
Ah oui?
Ah ouais,
On elle tourne.
On voit les serres. C'est avec ton épouse là, que tu marches en retard, je vois pas de photos passer. C'est ma copine, je peux marquer. Oui, c'est ton. Tu m'as fait une photo marrante passer. Oui.
Merci. Thank you very much.
Monsieur le Président, Madame la Première Dame, Mesdames, Messieurs,
Mr. President, Madam First Lady, ladies and gentlemen,
Mesdames, Messieurs, je voulais, à
ladies and
l'issue
gentlemen,
de ce G7 que nous venons de tenir
following this G7 meeting that we have just held,
près de 2 jours,
and we've been
évidemment vous
discussing
rendre compte,
for
mais avant toute chose,
2 days now,
remercier
and I'm
le
going
président
to
Trump,
report back to you. But first of all, I'd like
l'ensemble
to
des chefs
thank
d'État et
President Trump
de
and
gouvernement
all the heads of state and government
présents pour
present
ce travail
here
extrêmement
for the
productif et
extremely
les très bonnes
productive
discussions, les très
work
bons échanges que
and
nous
the
avons
very
eus depuis
productive
samedi soir ensemble.
discussions that we've had since
En effet,
Saturday evening
Il y
together.
avait beaucoup de nervosité
There was a lot of
au début de ce
nervousness
G7, beaucoup d'attentes,
at the outset, a lot of expectations,
de tensions, de conflictualité
a lot
qui
of
pouvaient être rapportées.
tensions, and
je
we heard
peux
about a lot
ici
of
vraiment dire que
conflicts, and I can
ce à quoi
say
nous avons tenu
that
ensemble tout particulièrement, c'est
what
que
we were
un
really
message
keen
d'unité,
on
un
was to
esprit
convey a
des discussions puissent
positive
ressortir, et c'est
and
ce qui est vraiment
joint message
ressorti de nos
following
échanges
our discussions.
sur de nombreux sujets.
Discussions on several
Nous n'avons
topics.
pas négocié, comme je m'y étais engagé, un très long texte.
We haven't
Et
negotiated a very
vous sera
long
remis dans
text
quelques
as
instants
promised,
une seule page de
and you will get
déclaration.
just
Et
a
ensuite beaucoup
one-page
d'annexes, de textes qui ont
declaration.
été agréés.
Then there'll be a lot of different
Mais une seule
annexes
page
to it.
qui revient sur
But it's
quelques
just
sujets
one
évidemment
page, a
essentiels,
one-page that covers
au-delà des
some of the
discussions et des
key
sessions de travail que nous
items
avons pu avoir.
that were
Nous avons tenu à faire cette conférence de presse ensemble.
Now,
Je
we
laisse
have
ensuite
decided to
le
hold this
président
joint
Trump,
conference.
la
I'm going to
Première
give
Dame
the
et
floor
l'ensemble de son staff
to
ici dans cette salle pour qu'ils puissent poursuivre par
President
sa
Trump,
propre conférence de presse
and
et
of course
répondre
President
à la
Trump
presse
and the
américaine et
First Lady
internationale
will
sur
then proceed with
tous les
their
autres
own
sujets.
press
Et je rendrai
conference
compte
to
de
the
manière
American
plus
press,
détaillée
where
un peu plus
other
tard de
discussions
l'ensemble des
will
points
take
sur
place.
lesquels
But
nous
I
avons
just wanted to
réussi
sum up the
à trouver
different
un accord et
items
les
on
avancées
which
sur de nombreux
we
sujets,
have agreed
de la
and the
biodiversité en
topics
passant
on
par le
which we have made
numérique
headway,
et les
biodiversity,
Mais nous
digital
tenions à avoir cette
economy,
conférence de presse
amongst
ensemble
others.
parce
So we
que
wanted to
l'année
hold this
prochaine,
joint conference together
ce sont
because
les
next
États-Unis
year
d'Amérique qui auront
it is the
à
United
accueillir
States
le
of
G7.
America that will
Ce
host the
passage de témoin de
G7
présidence
summit,
à présidence
and
est un
we are
point
going to
auquel nous tenions.
pass the baton on to
Et puis, je dois vous
President
dire,
Trump. That is
parce
why
que
we are
nous
here together.
avons, durant ces 2 jours et
And I
demi, fait
just
beaucoup
wanted
de
to
choses
say that for
ensemble.
the last 2 days we have worked a
On a
lot
sans doute
together
plusieurs points communs, mais
on
l'un tout
several
particulièrement avec le
common
président Trump.
points. Well, we have a
Nous
lot
n'aimons
of
pas perdre
things in
notre temps
common, but one thing we have in
et
common with President
nous
Trump
aimons
is they
avoir des
don't like to
résultats,
waste
des
our
accords
time, and we
et
like
mettre tout le
to
monde dans une
achieve
dynamique positive.
concrete results and to
Et donc,
provide
dès
momentum
l'arrivée du président
to the
Trump,
work.
à
And as
travers
soon
le
as
déjeuner en tête-à-tête que
President
nous avons eu,
Trump
qui, je dois dire, a été
arrived
sans
with
doute une des
the
discussions les plus
one-to-one
productives et les plus riches que nous
lunch
ayons
that we
eues
had together,
ensemble,
and I think that those are the
nous
most
sommes mis dans
productive
une
and
dynamique qui
interesting
a
conversations
permis
that we've had
véritablement de faire
together.
avancer
And from
nombre
that
de
point
dossiers. Je veux
onward,
vraiment remercier Monsieur le
we
Président
set
pour
the pace
cet
and
esprit
kept
et l'efficacité.
the ball rolling to be
Juste
as
quelques mots sur des
efficient
points
as
qui étaient très
possible till the
attendus, en
very end.
particulier pour nos deux pays.
There
Sur
are a
l'Iran.
few things that are expected from
Sur l'Iran,
both our countries. As far
le
as
président Trump et
Iran
moi-même
is
avons
concerned,
eu
President Trump and myself
des échanges toutes ces dernières semaines, et particulièrement ces 2
have
derniers
had
jours.
discussions in the last few weeks,
Nous
and
sommes
particularly in the
d'accord
last couple
pour
of
dire que
days,
l'Iran doit
and we
respecter
agree that
ses
Iran
obligations nucléaires,
needs to
doit
comply
avoir un
with its nuclear
comportement responsable
obligations
dans le Golfe
and have responsible
avec nous.
behavior in the Gulf
Et au
and
fond, on a
work
2 choses
with us.
très claires
And there
auxquelles
are
nous tenons.
2 very clear things
L'Iran ne
that
doit
matter to
jamais avoir
us.
l'arme nucléaire.
Iran should never
Et cette
have
situation ne doit
the
pas
nuclear
menacer la
weapon,
stabilité de la région.
and its situation should not threaten the
La France a
stability
pris
of the
plusieurs
region.
initiatives et j'en ai
France
toujours
has
tenu
taken a lot
informer
of different
le président
initiatives,
Trump
and I've always
pour essayer de
informed
trouver des
President
moyens
Trump
techniques
on
de
them
bouger.
to
Parce que
be able to
les
get the
décisions
technical
américaines
means
des
to
derniers
move
mois
forward,
ont mis
because the
beaucoup de pression
decisions that the
et
US
doivent nous mettre
taken
en
in the
situation
last few
d'améliorer
months have put a
justement
lot of pressure
la
and have
sécurité
put
régionale
us
de
in
la
a
région.
situation where it is indeed necessary to improve
Par
the
cette coordination,
security
nous avons pris une
situation of
initiative
the
hier qui a été
region.
de faire
So we
revenir
coordinated
le
our
ministre
efforts,
des
and
Affaires
we
étrangères
reached the
iranien.
decision to
Et
bring
de
together
nombreux échanges
the
avec le
foreign
ministre français
ministers, foreign
qui ont
minister
permis
of Iran,
justement de dessiner un chemin.
had a
Rien
meeting
n'est fait.
with the French foreign minister,
Les choses
and
sont encore éminemment fragiles.
a roadmap
Mais il y a
has
des
sort
discussions
of
qui se
been
sont
set,
ainsi
but
amorcées
nothing
sur le plan technique
is
avec véritablement
absolutely set in stone,
des
and we will
avancées.
have to move ahead
Et puis ce matin,
together to
le
find
président Rouhani a clairement dit
an
qu'il était
outcome.
prêt à
This morning,
à
President
rencontrer
Rouhani said
tout
that he was
responsable
prepared
politique si
to
c'est dans
meet
l'intérêt de son pays.
any political leader
Ce que j'ai dit
in the interest of his
au
country.
ministre Zarif, et ce que
And
j'ai
that's
dit
what I told
par
Minister
téléphone
Zarif,
au
and this
président
is what I
Rouhani,
mentioned to President Rouhani on the
c'est
phone
que
as
s'il
well,
acceptait une rencontre avec
that
le président
if he
Trump,
agreed to a meeting with
conviction
President Trump,
est qu'un
that my
accord peut être
conviction
trouvé.
was
On en
that
connaît
an
les termes,
agreement
les
can be
objectifs.
met. We know the terms, we know the objectives, but we have to just now sit around the table and make that happen. So I hope that in the next few weeks, based on our discussions, we will be able to achieve the meeting that we just mentioned between President Rouhani and President Trump, myself and the partners who have a role to play in nuclear negotiations will also be fully involved in these negotiations. And I think that this meeting is very important, and in the last few days have clarified the situation. A lot of messages have been conveyed, a lot of work has been done between our ministers. I would like to thank our ministers who have been totally involved in these discussions and have set the stage for these discussions and for an agreement. Of course, I want to be very cautious and very modest, but I think that this is going to lead to putting an end to escalation and reaching a suitable solution. So, the discussions that we had on Saturday afternoon and Saturday dinner have been very fruitful, and our purpose is to ensure the stability of the region. The idea is to make sure that Iran doesn't get the nuclear weapon and have more visibility in the long term. As far as trade is concerned, we've also shared a lot of analysis and a lot of observations. Later on, I'll go into the details of that. But I think we can say that our discussions have clarified what is legitimate and what the United States feels is an unfair situation. We have international rules that govern international trade. And in this one-page document, we said that it is very good to have a single organization that governs international trade. But so far, this collective body has not been very efficient in raising trade barriers. It has not been efficient enough in solving problems when they occurred. It has not been efficient enough in protecting the intellectual property of our industries. Discussions are underway currently, in particular between President Trump and President Xi. And we have seen, even in just the recent, very recent past, that an agreement can be reached. So we want to reaffirm our desire to change the rules that govern international trade and revamp them so that no one is dealt with unfairly, so that our workers are protected, and so that the situation of the past is put to an end. And this is something that we need to work on together. Now, there was a lot of nervousness because of misunderstanding, because some very powerful economic players could have said, what about this digital tax that France has imposed? Well, we have reached a very good agreement, and once again, the solid work that has been done upstream by our ministers has really helped us to make progress. In our economies, we have very unfair situations where some players don't pay taxes. So there is unfair competition with other players. And it is these large multinational players that don't pay taxes, which leads to significant instability on the economic front. Is this fair? It is not fair. Of course, we are pushing for international rules on this, even. And at the European level, 10 countries, France, Italy, even the UK is getting ready to do so, has decided to do something at the national level. But it is not against any company in particular. It's just to solve the problem. In fact, a lot of French companies will also be impacted by this tax. And some of you have probably heard me say a few months ago that this is only to find a solution, and the aim ultimately is to find an agreement internationally by 2020 to revamp international tax systems within the framework of the OECD to combat harmful trade practices, which are also harmful to the US economy. And through this digital tax, on this digital tax, we worked a lot bilaterally as well, and we have reached an agreement to overcome the hurdles. So we're going to work on a bilateral and multilateral basis to find a solution together. And the day international tax exists on digital digital services, France will do away with its national tax. And everything that has already been paid under the French tax system will be reimbursed. So the idea is that we need to find a joint agreement in order to address joint international problems. And the situation right now is very negative, and the international tax system definitely needs to be modernized. And I think we will work together in a spirit of cooperation on this. As to Libya, Syria, North Korea, Hong Kong, you will see in the one-page document that we have made considerable headway in the spirit of unity, and we have also done some significant work in as far as the Amazon region is concerned. There have been relations with President Bolsonaro, and we have taken a very ambitious initiative that President Pinheiro presented this morning after having discussed with all the heads of state and government of the region, as we had wished and as President Trump had wished as well. I don't want to go into the details, but I just wanted to highlight these few things that I just mentioned. I just wanted to say that we worked together hand in hand with President Trump over these 2 days. And during this G7, and I would like to thank all my colleagues, in fact, for this, we have managed to reach convergence at unprecedented levels on several issues. And now we're going to continue this work in the weeks and months to follow with a lot of energy. And North Korea knows how strongly President Trump is committed to this issue. There's also the agreement with China, and we're going to work hand in hand on all of the different issues. I would like to thank you, President Trump, for your involvement in the last couple of days. I would like to thank your First Lady, who was by your side and who has been very active side by side with my own spouse, and she has honored us in our country. She knows how popular she is in our country, and President Trump will be hosting the G7 summit next year, so I'm going to give him the floor so that he can tell us how you intend to organize the G7, and I will be there by your side with the same will and the same determination and the same desire for unity. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you very much, and I think more importantly than anything, I wanted to come up here to say that because the job that President Macron and your wife, by the way, who is a great lady, Bridget, would like to thank Bridget. She has been spectacular, spent a tremendous amount of time with Melania and some of the folks who came in, some of the wives that came in, and they had a great tour of the area, and it's a beautiful area. But I want to thank you very much, Mr. President, for the incredible job you did. This is a truly successful G7. There was tremendous unity. There was great unity. Sometimes I'd read a little bit of false reporting, and I will tell you there was, in fact, we would have stayed for another hour. Nobody wanted to leave. We were accomplishing a lot, but I think more importantly, we were getting along very well. 7 countries, and it really was the G7, and you have been a spectacular leader on this. And I want to thank you, and I want to thank the great country of France. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, my friend.
And with that, I think, excuse me, I was, go ahead, let's go.
No, I just wanted to say we will take 2 questions from each side. Afterward, I will say goodbye to my friend President Trump. I will leave the room in order for you to follow up with your
If you'd like, we could do 2 each, and then we'll both leave the room. Would you prefer that, or would you prefer I just don't want to have the President of France standing here while I'm answering these absolutely wonderful questions, okay? So why don't we start with a question for France?
These 4 questions are about G7 and U.S.-Franco relations.
And Emmanuel's going to have his own press conference after this.
Exactly.
So that'll be fine. Go ahead. To France, John. To France.
Thank you, Marco. Of course, the host country, they should go first. Monsieur President Macron, China was not on the official agenda, but it was certainly a big part of the discussions here at the G7. Are you concerned that the trade war that exists now between the United States and China could harm the global economy? If you are, did you talk to President Trump about that? And are you also at the same time concerned that if China's current trade practices go unchecked, that a decade from now we could be in a very terrible situation?
Sur ce sujet, nous en avons évidemment longuement
On this
discuté
subject, we obviously had lengthy discussions
durant la session sur l'économie mondiale
during the
d'hier matin.
session on the world economy yesterday morning,
Sur vos deux sujets.
on both subjects.
Les discussions qui sont en cours entre
The
la Chine et
discussions
les
underway
États-Unis
between
d'Amérique,
China and the United States of
évidemment,
America,
elles créent, on le voit bien,
obviously,
des
as we
incertitudes
clearly see,
qui
create
agitent les marchés, les
uncertainty,
investisseurs,
which disturb
et qui
markets
pendant le
and
temps de la négociation
investors,
créent des
and
tensions,
during the
qui est le
negotiations
cas
will
de
create
toute
tensions,
discussion.
which is the case of any
Et
discussion.
on l'a vu sur les
We saw
différents marchés
this
actions
on
que
different
nous
stock
connaissons.
markets
Maintenant, la question,
with
c'est
which we're familiar.
l'issue de cette
Now the
discussion.
question is to know what the
C'est
result of these
pourquoi
discussions
ce à
will
quoi
be.
nous sommes attachés sur
And
ce
that's
point,
why
c'est qu'un accord puisse être
we
trouvé.
considered that it was so important an agreement
les deux
be
premières
found
puissances économiques.
between the two greatest
Président
economic
Trump
powers in
nous
the world.
a clairement indiqué sa volonté de
President
trouver un
Trump
accord.
clearly showed us
Nous
his
avons d'ailleurs
willingness
noté
to arrive at an
encore il y a
agreement.
quelques heures
We saw just a
des
few
messages
hours
plutôt
ago
positifs,
the very
encourageants,
positive and
qui ont pu être
encouraging
distillés.
message that
On
could
voit
be
que les choses
distilled
bougent.
from this. We see that things are
Mon souhait
moving.
très profond, c'est qu'un accord puisse
Our
être trouvé
deep
entre les
wish is
États-Unis
for an
d'Amérique
agreement to be
et la
found
Chine
between
sur
the
le plan
United
commercial.
States and
Je
China
pense que ce sera
concerning trade,
positif.
because I think
tout le
that would
monde.
be something positive for everyone.
Ni les États-Unis ni la Chine ne sont
Neither the
naïfs
United
sur le
States
plan
nor
politique, sur le
China
plan économique et
is
industriel. Donc, cet
economically
accord
or
devra être
industrially naive.
équilibré pour être
It has
bon
to be a
de
balanced
tous les côtés.
agreement that will be good for
Nous
everyone.
veillons à ce qu'il soit bon pour
And
l'ensemble du
we
globe.
will be
Et
vigilant
donc,
to see that it's
dans ce
good for the whole
contexte-là,
world. In that
Et les paramètres
context,
soient pris en compte, ça a été aussi
our
l'objet de
different
notre
parameters will be taken on
Donc,
board,
ce
and
qui
that
est
was one of the
mauvais,
subjects
si
of
je
our
puis dire, pour
discussion.
l'économie mondiale, c'est
What's
l'incertitude.
bad for the world
Et donc, plus
economy
vite
is
cet accord est
uncertainty,
trouvé, plus
and
on
the
réduit cette
quicker an
incertitude.
agreement is arrived
Et
at,
c'est
the
très
quicker
clairement ce que
that
nous avons échangé
uncertainty
hier,
will
et
dissipate.
ce qui est la volonté,
That's what we discussed
du président
yesterday,
américain.
and that's the American
Sur ce qui est ensuite
president's
des pratiques
wish.
commerciales.
In terms of
Je l'ai
trade
dit tout à l'heure.
practices, I said this earlier.
Pour moi, la manière
For
la
me,
plus
the
efficace
most
pour nous
effective way
et la plus
forward
stratégique
and the most strategic way
de régler
forward
notre relation commerciale avec la Chine,
in settling our trade relations
c'est de
with
développer
China
les échanges,
is to develop
mais de
trade,
s'assurer que ces échanges
but also
s'inscrivent
to
dans le cadre
ensure
des
that
règles
that trade
internationales.
is part of
Les
international
problèmes que
trade
nous avons
rules.
parfois eu.
The problems we
On connaît
sometimes
très bien
had,
avec l'économie chinoise.
we're very
C'est une
familiar with
grande
this with the
économie avec
Chinese
laquelle il y a eu beaucoup
economy.
d'investissements, qu'il
It's a
s'agisse des
major
États-Unis
economy
d'Amérique,
where there's been lots
des
of
pays
investment
européens,
from the
du
United
Canada ou du
States,
Japon.
European countries,
Le problème,
Canada, and
c'est
Japan.
les sujets de
The
respect de la
problem
propriété
is
intellectuelle,
respecting intellectual property,
c'est le traitement de surcapacité,
dealing with excess
qui
capacity,
parfois ont déséquilibré certains marchés mondiaux.
which sometimes
Et
unbalances
c'est la
some world
capacité à
markets,
régler très rapidement les conflits qu'on
and
peut avoir et
the
de fixer des
ability
situations
to deal
déloyales.
rapidly with conflicts
de
we may have
constater
and with
que
unfair situations.
lorsqu'on a fait ce
Now, we
commerce
are obliged
hors
to
des
see
règles de
that when
l'OMC,
this type of
les choses ne
trade
marchent pas bien, on
happens
n'était pas bien
outside of
traité.
WTO rules,
Et
things
qu'ensuite,
don't work
lorsqu'on a
very
fait
well
dans
and
les
we're not
règles de
properly
l'OMC,
protected.
l'OMC
And when we
avec ses
follow
règles existantes n'a pas permis
WTO
de bien
rules,
régler ces sujets.
the WTO rules
Et
as
donc,
they
ce que
presently
nous
exist
avons
haven't
décidé
allowed us to
ensemble
be protected
hier
on this
matin,
subject. So what we decided
c'est
together
maintenant
yesterday morning
d'accélérer, mais avec un agenda
was
très
to
réaliste, de dire
accelerate with a
on doit
very
changer les
realistic
règles du commerce
agenda and to say
international
we're going to
pour que
change the
chacun
rules
puisse
of world
échanger de
trade
manière libre
so that everyone
et
can
juste,
have free and fair
équilibrée.
trade,
Et donc,
balanced
tous ces
trade,
sujets que je viens
and
d'évoquer,
that
qui
the
parfois ont
subjects
été
that I've just mentioned,
mauvais
which have
pour nos
sometimes
économies,
been bad for our
puissent être réglés dans
economies,
un cadre international
can be
qu'on veut
settled
profondément
in
changer.
an international
Et donc là, c'est à
framework
nous,
which we wish
je veux dire, à nos
profoundly to
ministres,
change.
dans les forums
And
qui sont prévus,
we and our
de faire
different
ce travail. On
ministers in
partage le
the
même
different
objectif.
contexts that we're putting forward are
Et
going
donc,
to
pour moi, la
share
manière de
these
régler
political goals. And
ces
to my way of
pratiques que vous
thinking, the
évoquiez,
way to deal with
c'est
the
sans doute
practices
des
you have
accords,
mentioned,
j'espère positifs, qui
certainly
sont trouvés.
the
C'est
positive
le
agreements
renouvellement
that
de nos règles
will
commerciales internationales,
be
comme nous
arrived
nous
at,
sommes
and
engagés
also the
hier
renewal
matin.
of our international trade rules, as we said yesterday morning.
President Trump, are you satisfied with how far the proposed WTO reforms will go? Because
No,
you've
I'm
spoken-
not,
You've
but-
spoken about the need for that. And second to that,
We're getting there, Jim. Just to answer that, we're
second to
getting
that,
there.
do you believe that China is sincere about what it said this morning? Or
Yes.
do you think that they are just trying to calm the markets and play for time? Because our sister network, the Fox Business Network, has been told by Chinese sources that they have no plans on going back to where they were in terms of the negotiations this spring on intellectual property, forced technology transfer, ownership. So
We'll see, John.
Do you trust that they are sincere?
I
about
do.
this?
I think they want to make a deal very badly. I think that was elevated last night, very late in the night. I see an alert, or you would call it breaking news, and it was that the vice chairman, we're not talking about somebody from China at a low level. The vice chairman of China came out that he wants to see a deal made. He wants it to be made under calm conditions, using the word calm. I agree with him on that. And China has taken a very hard hit over the last number of months. They've lost 3 million jobs. It'll soon be much more than 3 million jobs. Their chain is breaking. The chain is breaking up like nobody's seen before. And once that happens, it's very hard to put it back together. You understand? I think they very much want to make a deal. And the longer they wait, the harder it is to put it back, if it can be put back at all. So I believe they want to do a deal. The tariffs have hit them very hard. In a fairly short period of time, the United States will have collected over $100 billion in tariffs. And I say it again, the media failed to acknowledge it. But if you look at the goods coming in from China, we're talking about China, not other countries. If you look at the goods, they have a power that others don't have. But that power is only good for so long. They've manipulated their currency, they've devalued their currency, and they put a lot of cash into the system. And because of that, the prices have not gone up, or if they've gone up, it's been very little, because they want to keep people working. If the prices go up, they're not going to be able to keep people working. They're not going to be able to compete. It's a brilliant market. It's a brilliant, brilliant market, the world market. A lot of markets are brilliant. And frankly, I think that China cannot, I don't know, maybe they can, maybe they can't. I don't think they can do that. And I think they're very smart. And I think President Xi is a great leader who happens to be a brilliant man. And he can't lose 3 million jobs in a very short period of time. And that's going to be magnified many times over. And it's going to break down the Chinese system of trade. And he can't do that. So when you say, do you think they want to? Maybe they want to and maybe they don't. But I think they want to make a deal. I'm not sure they have a choice. And I don't say that as a threat. I don't think they have a choice. In the meantime, the United States, which has never collected 10 cents from China, will, in a fairly short period of time, be over $100 billion in tariffs. So I think they want to make a deal very badly. Okay. Go ahead.
Deuxième question.
Second question.
Messieurs les Présidents, Mathieu Koch, BFM TV.
Mr. President, you've just declared that you've created the conditions for a meeting between President Trump and President Rouhani. Does that mean that France, for instance, might be a mediator in that meeting? And more concretely, what did you discuss in terms of that possible agreement with Iran? Then a question for Mr. Trump. Are you ready to lift or to soften American sanctions on Iranian oil exports, and would you be ready to meet President Rouhani? Thank you.
Sur la première question.
On the first question,
Les termes de la discussion
the terms of the discussion are quite simple.
Un accord a été signé en
An
2015,
agreement was signed in 2015.
le 14 juillet 2015.
On
qu'on
July
appelle le
14th, we
JCPOA.
call it the JCPOA.
Et cet accord a
And that
prévu
agreement
des garanties pour la communauté internationale,
set
en
forth
particulier pour les
guarantees for the
signataires de cet accord,
international community, including the signatories of that
Iran
agreement,
n'enrichisse plus
saying
l'uranium
that Iran would no
sur une
longer
période de temps.
enrich
Je simplifie
uranium
les termes de
over
l'accord,
a
jusqu'en
certain period of
2025.
time. I'm simplifying
En
this, but up
contrepartie,
to 2025.
La réouverture
In exchange
secteur
for
économique
reopening
et d'un
many
investissement
economic
massif,
sectors and
largement
massive
porté,
investment,
bien dire, par les États-Unis
largely
d'Amérique.
made by the United States.
Cet accord avait
That
un double
agreement
avantage,
had a twofold advantage:
stabilité et sécurité,
stability
et
and
réouverture
security,
économique, ce qui était bon pour l'Iran.
and also reopening, economically
Cet accord
speaking,
avait
which
des
was good for
insuffisances.
Iran.
Je rappelle au
This
demeurant
agreement
que les
also
négociateurs
had
français en
drawbacks and
2015
shortcomings. French negotiators in
furent les plus
2015
et que la France
were
était la plus
the
hésitante à
most
signer cet accord.
determined, and France was the country that hesitated most to sign this agreement because we considered we needed as many guarantees as possible. President Trump, during his campaign, made a commitment to those who voted for him to be more demanding and tougher because he considered that this agreement was insufficient, which caused him to leave it. Today, because of the sanctions made by President Trump, the Iranian economy is having serious consequences and a serious slowdown. And that situation very clearly is the aspect, we might say the positive side of things, from one standpoint, is creating pressure and therefore the necessary conditions to improve the terms of an agreement. On the other hand, it's leading to reactions in Iran who are saying, well, we've signed this agreement, but those who have signed it are not respecting its terms, and so starting symbolically to enrich uranium, and they risk that they're going to go further still and leave the JCPOA. So, given the two goals that we have, where are we going with this? We need to be sure that Iran will never get a nuclear weapon and that there will be no flare-ups in the region. And so what we discussed very concretely was to see how we could improve very considerably, or really, in fact, build a new nuclear agreement with Iran. President Trump was very clear, saying that we would need a much longer time frame for it, that there needed to be surveillance of many more sites, and this is how we can build a much further reaching agreement in terms of our security demands. And on the other hand, we need to convince the Iranians to go in that direction, and we can do that if we give them economic compensation of some form. If we make some movement in terms of lines of credit or reopening certain economic sectors. I can't tell you today publicly more about this because anything I will tell you in detail will jeopardize the conversations we're going to have. But this is basically what we're discussing. On the basis of our initiative, there's also a Japanese initiative. I'm talking in total transparency with the president, but we agreed on a strategic goal, and I want us to go further in this framework and to make proposals. At a given point in time, there will have to be a meeting between the American and the Iranian presidents, and I would wish that in coming weeks, such a meeting take place. France will play a role together with the other signatories who are our partners in the JCPOA. But after that, we'll need to create the necessary conditions, because we'll have the necessary visibility for this agreement to be signed and sealed, and for this meeting between the two presidents to take place. So I would rather talk about concerted initiatives and exchanges rather than mediation, because at the end of the day, we have constant exchanges with President Trump. I share his goals. Sometimes we say we don't agree on methods, but I want to get there. I want to have an agreement. And I think there's been a true change. This morning, President Rouhani showed himself to be open to this meeting happening. And President Trump has been saying for weeks that he's being demanding, he's being tough, he's put forward sanctions, but I'm ready to have a meeting to make a deal. And I think that we're making progress. I want this meeting to happen, and I want there to be an agreement between the United States and Iran. And France will play the role it is meant to play together with the United Kingdom, with Germany, and all of the other signatory powers and the permanent members of the Security Council.
Iran is a country that is not the same country that it was 2.5 years ago when I came into office. Iran was the #1 state of terror throughout the world. There were 18 sites of confliction in my first week when I spoke with the folks at the Pentagon, including lots of generals and lots of other military experts. 18 sites of confliction, meaning 18 sites of big problems. Every one of them was backed by Iran, or in some cases actually using Iranian soldiers, but at a minimum Iranian wealth, much of it given in the ridiculous deal where they were given $150 billion plus $1.8 billion in cash, and they used that money for some bad purposes. With that being said, I think that Iran is a country of tremendous potential. We're not looking for leadership change. We're not looking for that kind of change. This country has been through that many times before. That doesn't work. We're looking for no nuclear weapons, no ballistic missiles, and a longer period of time. Very simple. We can have it done in a very short period of time. And I really believe that Iran can be a great nation. I'd like to see that happen. But they can't have nuclear weapons. Okay? Thank you. Excuse me? Would you agree to meet with Iran? If the circumstances were correct or the right, I would certainly agree to that. But in the meantime, they have to be good players. You understand what that means? And they can't do what they were saying they're going to do, because if they do that, they're going to be met with really very violent force. We have no choice. So I think they're going to be good. I really think they'd like to. And by the way, President Macron told me every step that he was making yesterday. A lot of you said, oh, he came in. He told me long before he came in what was happening, I didn't think it was appropriate to meet yesterday, too soon, and things have to be worked out first. But President Macron told me exactly what was happening, who was coming, what time they were coming, where they were going to meet. And after the meeting, he told me exactly what happened. And I think he had a very positive meeting. Prime Minister Abe of Japan, also a large purchaser of oil from Iran, he was also very much involved. And, you know, look, he knows everybody there, so he was a very, very positive force. But I have to tell you, the president's done an excellent job, and we're going to see how it all turns out. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. I say it all the time about everything. Maybe it works, and maybe it doesn't. But I'll tell you what, we made a ridiculous deal. We gave him $150 billion, gave him $1.8 billion, and we got nothing. We got nothing. And by the way, that agreement was so short-term that it expires in a very short period of time. With a country, you don't make a deal that short. Countries last for long times, and you don't do short-term deals, especially when you're paying that kind of money. So I have good feelings about Iran. I have good feelings that it'll work. I know many Iranians living in New York City. I have many friends from Iran. They're incredible people, incredible people. So the last thing I'd like to see is a big problem, but we have to do what we have to do, okay? Go ahead, please. No, you first, go on. No, go ahead, yes.
Thank you. President Macron, did you seek President Trump's permission before you invited Foreign Minister Zarif, or did you simply inform him that he was coming?
Thanks for this very precise question. But to be very clear, and we are part of the JCPOA. We decided to remain as a deal. So we are very much interested by the situation as a sovereign country. That's why we want the different parties to move. On the other side, as President Trump made it very clear over the summer, we never spoke on behalf of other countries. We just tested some solutions and to see if we can find an agreement with different countries. So we took an initiative this summer to make a proposal, a technical one. I got a reaction from Iran through President Zarif's visit on Friday morning in Paris. After the discussion we had at the G-7 dinner on Saturday evening, I thought that it was very clear about where we can go together. So the day after, I decided to invite, as friends, Minister Zarif. So I informed, before making it, I informed President Trump that it was my idea not to involve the United States, not to say this is on behalf of you, of everybody, but to say, as friends, I think it would be a good idea to ask him to go back and try to negotiate something separately. So I did it on my own. I informed, before making it, President Trump. He was informed at each minute about the situation. And the idea for me was, in case of structural move and important move on appropriate solutions, perhaps to have meetings between ministers, not at President Trump's level, because President Trump's level is President Rouhani. So this is my precise answer. This is a French initiative, but made by a clear information of the US President before, information as well of the three Europeans, and each time I informed President Trump in order to monitor the situation and to appreciate together if something more was adapted.
I have to say the JCPOA was a bad deal, should not have been entered into. A lot of things could have happened that would have been much different. They're allowed to test ballistic missiles. You're not allowed to go to various sites to check. And some of those sites are the most obvious sites for the creation or the making of nuclear weapons. And those things have to be changed, and other things have to be changed. And I will tell you, I have very good feelings about it. I think that we're going to do something. It may not be immediately, but I think ultimately we're going to do something. As I said, Iran is a much different country than it was 2.5 years ago. And we can get that back, and I'd encourage it. I actually had friends years ago, many years ago, they were in the real estate business, and they were in Iran, and they were building houses and building housing and building office buildings and apartment houses, and they did very well. They made a lot of money, and to this day, they're not exactly the youngest developers anymore, but I tell you, they were young when they went over there. They made a lot of money, and they loved the people, and they loved what was going on. And it's a country with tremendous potential. I also say that, by the way, with respect to North Korea. Kim Jong-un, who I've gotten to know extremely well, First Lady has gotten to know Kim Jong-un, and I think she'd agree with me. He is a man with a country that has tremendous potential. You're in between China, Russia, and South Korea. People want to get to South Korea. They got to get there somehow, and if they're going to do anything other than essentially fly, they want to go through. So railroads and everything else, so many things want to happen there. I think that North Korea has tremendous economic potential, and I think that Kim Jong-un sees that. He would be the leader, and I think he sees the tremendous potential that it's got. With respect to Iran, same thing. Iran is incredible people, an incredible country potentially, location that's a little rough neighborhood, but eventually it's going to be a beautiful neighborhood. I think that it's going to be, I think it's going to work out. And I really believe that those countries that went into the original deal, that more and more are agreeing with what I did. But I think those countries are going to be saying thank you someday. I hope they're going to be saying, including France, including the president, because I think we did the right thing. I know we did the right thing. If for no other reason, it's just too short. It's almost expiring, if you think about it. And somebody said, well, you'll go and make an extension. No, no, they're great negotiators. Look at what they did to get the deal. Look at what they did to John Kerry and to President Obama. Look what happened, where they're bringing plane loads of cash, plane loads, big planes, 757s, Boeing 757s, coming in loaded up with cash. What kind of a deal is that? So I think a lot of good things are going to happen. And I just want to say this because I've spoken a lot with the president this last 2.5 days. We've never had a better relationship. We had a lunch that lasted for quite a while that many of you got to see. It was the two of us. No staff, no anything. He wasn't trying to impress his people. I wasn't trying to impress his people. We were just trying to impress each other. And I'll tell you what, it was the best period of time we've ever had. And we accomplished a lot. I don't mean just, gee whiz, wasn't that nice? He's a very capable man. He's doing a great job for France. He did an incredible job for the G-7, and I just want to thank you. And you go ahead to your news conference, and very special. This was a very special, very unified 2.5 days, and I want to thank you for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will leave the floor and the press conference to President Trump, and I will wait for the end of your own press conference. Voilà, finalement. Je ferai une conférence de presse. Je laisse la poser au président. Allez-y.
Écoutez, je ne veux pas faire de délation, Monsieur le Président.
I don't want to give anything away, but we saw your wife, the First Lady, drink a glass of French wine yesterday. So can you perhaps give up on your threat to put sanctions on French wine? Because if we've understood correctly, you have arrived at an agreement on taxing digital firms. Could you confirm that there has been an agreement between you and France on taxing digital firms?
No, I can confirm that the First Lady loved your French wine, okay? All right? She loved your French wine. So thank you very much. That's fine. You go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci à vous. I will wait for the end of this press conference to have the press conference of the presidency. I will leave the floor to you. Thank you. Thank you.
Good job. This is worse than you are. I can't believe it. Jonathan. Come on up. believed it a while ago. We're going to get there. And we're going to have a really, we're going to have a fair deal. But remember this, when you say fair, China's been taking out of this country $500+ billion a year for many, many years. Many, many years. It was time to stop. As a private person, I used to talk about it. It's one of the reasons I'm president. And we're in a great position. Our country's doing well. Our unemployment numbers are the lowest they've been in over 50 years. Our unemployment numbers for African American, Asian, for Hispanic are the best they've ever been. Historic numbers. We're in a very strong position. Our consumers are strong. Walmart just announced numbers that were, I mean, mind-boggling numbers. It's a great poll right there. That's the ultimate poll. How are the retailers doing and how are certain companies doing? So we're doing very well, and I think that I think we're going to make a deal with China, and I think we're probably eventually we're going to make a deal with Iran too.
But why are you optimistic they'll change their behavior?
It's not a question of behavior. I think they want to make a deal, and I think they should make a deal, and I think if they don't make a deal, it's going to be very bad for China. And I very much appreciate the fact that they came out last night, very late last night, and they said, you know, they want to make a deal. They want it to be under calm circumstances. It was a little different kind of a statement. I thought it was a beautiful statement. I thought it indicated a lot. Go ahead. Here we go.
I actually have a question for you on next year's G7 summit, but can I just clarify something you said? You mentioned earlier today.
One question. Go ahead.
Let me do the clarification and then I'll get to the question.
No.
You talked about
One
calls
question.
with China and a breaking news alert. I'm trying to understand what specifically you heard from China. And on next year's G7, you alluded today, dropped several hints about Miami, about Doral, and hosting next year's G7 at your property. What reassurances, if any, can you give the American people that you are not looking to profit off the presidency?
Well, I'll tell you what, I've spent, and I think I will, in a combination of loss and opportunity. Probably it'll cost me anywhere from $3 to $5 billion to be president. And the only thing I care about is this country. Couldn't care less, otherwise I wouldn't have done it. People have asked me, what do you think it costs? And between opportunity, not doing things, I used to get a lot of money to make speeches. Now I give speeches all the time. You know what I get? Zippo, and that's good. And I did a lot of great jobs and great deals that I don't do anymore, and I don't want to do them because the deals I'm making are great deals for the country, and that's to me much more important. Doral happens to be within Miami. It's a city. It's a wonderful place. It's a very, very successful area of Florida. It's very importantly only 5 minutes from the airport. The airport's right next door. It's a big international airport, one of the biggest in the world. Everybody that's coming, all of these people with all of their big entourages come. It's set up so, and by the way, my people looked at 12 sites, all good, but some were 2 hours from an airport, some were 4 hours from, I mean, it was so far away. Some didn't allow this, so they didn't allow that. With Doral, we have a series of magnificent buildings. We call them bungalows. They each hold from 50 to 70 very luxurious rooms with magnificent views. We have incredible conference rooms, incredible restaurants. It's like such a natural. We wouldn't even have to do the work that they did here, and they've done a beautiful job. They've really done a beautiful job. And what we have also is Miami. And we have many hundreds of acres so that in terms of parking, in terms of all of the things that you need, the ballrooms are among the biggest in Florida and the best. It's brand new. And they want that. My people wanted it. From my standpoint, I'm not going to make any money. In my opinion, I'm not going to make any money. I don't want to make money. I don't care about making money. If I wanted to make money, I wouldn't worry about $3 billion to $5 billion, because that's what, I mean, at some point I'm going to detail that, and we'll show. But I think it's just a great place to be. I think having it in Miami is fantastic, really fantastic. Having it at that particular place because of the way it's set up. Each country can have their own villa or their own bungalow. And the bungalows, when I say, they have a lot of units in them. So I think it just works out well. And when my people came back, they took tours. They went to different places. I won't mention places, but you'll have a list because they're going to give a presentation on it fairly soon. They went to places all over the country. And they came back and they said, this is where we'd like to be. Now, we had military people doing it. We had Secret Service people doing it. We had people that really understand what it's about. It's not about me. It's about getting the right location. I think it's very important. Jonathan?
trying to boost our own brand?
Not at all. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Thank you, Mr. President. President Macron said he'd like to see talks between you and President Rouhani within weeks. Does that sound realistic to you? Could you see yourself in talks with the Iranians within weeks?
Well, it does. I don't know the gentleman. I think I know him a little bit just by watching over the last number of years what's happened. Tell you one thing, he's a great negotiator. But I think he's going to want to meet. I think Iran wants to get this situation straightened out. Now, is that based on fact or based on gut? That's based on gut. But they want to get their situation straightened out, Jonathan. And they're really hurting badly. Their inflation, as you know, because I saw you reporting on it, their inflation is through the roof. Their economy is tanked entirely. The sanctions are absolutely hurting them horribly. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. They're great people. I don't want to see that. But we can't let them have a nuclear weapon. Can't let it happen. So I think that there's a really good chance that we would meet. Jeff, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Another follow-up from what the President of France said. He said that there might be a need for compensation to Iran. Would you, given all of the criticism you've made of the JCPOA and the money that they got, be open to giving Iran compensation if it met some of the criteria that you laid out?
What he's talking in terms of compensation is they are out of money. And they need a short-term letter of credit or loan. No, we're not paying. We don't pay. But they may need some money to get them over a very rough patch. And if they do need money, certainly, and it would be secured by oil, which to me is great security. And they have a lot of oil, but it's secured by oil. So we're really talking about a letter of credit type facility.
From the U.S. or from
it would be from numerous countries. In numerous countries, and it comes back. It would expire. It would be paid back immediately, and very quickly. Yes, go ahead, please. Go ahead. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Naoatsu Aoyama with the Asahi Shimbun, a Japanese newspaper.
Good.
Now
just left.
Now the
Your Prime Minister, Abe. Good man, great man.
Okay, and now the U.S. and Japan have an agreement in principle, which you said is a tremendous trade deal for the United States. So
and for Japan, I would say.
So are you still considering imposing Section 232 tariffs on Japan's auto exports to the United States on national security grounds?
Not at this moment, no. Not at this moment. Well, it's one of the reasons we made the deal, but no, not at this moment. It's something I could do at a later date if I wanted to, but we're not looking at that. We just want to be treated fairly. You know, Japan has had a tremendous trade surplus with the United States for many, many years, long before I came here. And I'll tell you something, we're transforming our country. We're taking these horrible, one-sided, foolish, very dumb, stupid, if you'd like to use that word, because it's so descriptive. We're taking these trade deals that are so bad, and we're making good, solid deals out of them. And that's transforming our country. That will be transformative and very exciting, I think, for our country. Very, very exciting. Please, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, I didn't actually say you. I said the woman behind you. So why don't we do her first? You've been asking a lot of questions all day long.
Thanks, Mr. President. Yamiche Shelton.
Can't say I don't give you access, right? Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. President. Yamiche Shelton with PBS NewsHour.
Yes.
Why do you think it's appropriate to invite Russia to the G7, given that they've meddled in the 2016 election? And are you worried that if Russia does come to the G7, that it might hurt you politically because it's only going to be a couple months before the 2020 election?
I don't care politically. I really don't. A lot of people don't understand this. I ran one election and I won. Happened to be for president. I don't care politically. I'm going to run another election. I think I'm winning based on polls that we see. Whether I win or not, I have to do the right thing. So I don't do things for political reasons. Is it good? Probably not. Maybe it is. I mean, a lot of people are smart. A lot of people say having Russia, which is a power, having them inside the room is better than having them outside the room. By the way, there were numerous people during the G7 that felt that way. And we didn't take a vote or anything, but we did discuss it. My inclination is to say, yes, they should be in. They were, really, it was a President Obama. I'm not blaming him, but a lot of bad things happened with President Putin and President Obama. One of the things that happened was as you know, what happened with a very big area, a very, very big and important area in the Middle East where the red line was drawn, and then President Obama decided that he was not going to do anything about it. You can't draw red lines in the sand. You just can't do it. And the other was in Ukraine, having to do with a certain section of Ukraine that you know very well, where it was sort of taken away from President Obama. Not taken away from President Trump, taken away from President Obama. President Obama was not happy that this happened because it was embarrassing to him, right? It was very embarrassing to him. And he wanted Russia to be out of what was called the G-8. And that was his determination. He was outsmarted by Putin. He was outsmarted. President Putin outsmarted President Obama. Wait a minute. And I can understand how President Obama would feel. He wasn't happy, and they're not in for that reason. Now, I'm only thinking about the world, and I'm thinking about this country in terms of the G7, whether it's G7, G8. I think it would be better to have Russia inside the tent than outside the tent. Do we live either way? Yes, we live either way. Is it politically popular for me to say that? Possibly not. I think a lot of people would agree with me, frankly, but possibly not. I do nothing for politics. I know a lot of you aren't going to, you're going to smile at that. I do nothing for politics. I do what's right. And people like what I do. But I just do what's right. If I wanted to go strictly by politics, I'd probably poll that, and possibly I'd say, oh, gee, I don't want Russia in. But I really think it's good for security of the world. It's good for the economics of the world. Remember, they're building a big pipeline in Europe going right up to Germany. And I said to Angela, who I had a great relationship, but I said, you know, you pay Russia billions of dollars, and then we defend you from Russia. And I say, how does that work?
A misleading statement that Russia outsmarted President Obama,
well,
when other countries have said that the reason why Russia was kicked out was very clearly because they annexed Crimea. Why keep repeating what some people would see as a clear lie?
Well, it was annexed during President, I know you like President Obama, but it was annexed during President Obama's term. If it was annexed during my term, I'd say, sorry, folks, I made a mistake, or sorry, folks. President Obama was helping Ukraine. Crimea was annexed during his term. Now, it's a very big area, very important area. Russia has its submarine. That's where they do their submarine work, and that's where they dock large and powerful submarines, but not as powerful as ours and not as large as ours. But they have their submarines. And President Obama was pure and simply outsmarted. They took Crimea during his term. That was not a good thing. It could have been stopped. Could have been stopped with the right whatever. It could have been stopped. But President Obama was unable to stop it, and it's too bad. Go ahead.
As the G7 host next year, you were allowed to invite other countries to come, guest countries, even though they're not necessarily part of the overall group. Would you consider inviting Vladimir Putin under those circumstances?
I don't know that he'd accept. Those are tough circumstances. He was a part of G8, and all of a sudden, he's not out or he's not in. So I think, John, actually, that's a pretty tough thing for him. You know, he's a proud person. Would I invite him? I would certainly invite him. Whether or not he could come psychologically, I think that's a tough thing for him to do. You have a G8, now it's a G7, and you invite the person that was thrown out really by President Obama, and really because he got outsmarted. President Obama, pure and simple. And don't forget, it was not just Crimea. It was the red line in the sand. And Obama said, never violate the red line in the sand. And then they went ahead and they killed many children with gas. It was terrible. And he did nothing about it. I did, but I was there years later. I did something about it, but I was there late. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Can you help us understand the timeline on the China calls? Were you referring to the statement by the Vice President?
Well, we've had many calls. Secretary Mnuchin is here, and you've had many calls over the last 24 hours, but certainly over the last 48 hours. We've had many calls, not just one. This isn't one. And these are high-level calls. They want to make a deal. And by the way, I think a deal's going to be made, but they want to make a deal.
So the Chinese are saying that there weren't any
The
particular
Chinese are not
calls.
saying that.
Are they not being
Excuse me, let me explain something. The vice chairman of China. Do you get higher than that other than President Xi? The vice president, the vice chairman, it's like the vice president, the vice chairman made the statement that he wants to make a deal, that he wants to see a calm atmosphere. He wants it all to happen. That says it there. I don't have to talk about, you folks were reporting before, well, we can't find any phone call. He released a statement. I didn't release it. He released a statement.
But there were phone calls, sir, Mr. President. There were phone calls.
Numerous calls. And not only with Steve, there were calls with other people, too. Just so you understand, China wants to make a deal. Now, whether or not we make a deal, it's got to be a great deal for us. And I told this to President Xi, who I really respect. I really do. I have great respect, and I like him, too. He's a tough guy. But I have a lot of feeling for President Xi. He's very outstanding in so many ways. But I told him very strongly, I said, look, you're starting up here, and you're making $500 billion a year and stealing our intellectual property. We're down on the floor, lower than the floor. You can't make a 50-50 deal. This has to be a deal that's better for us. And if it's not better, let's not do business together. I don't want to do business. Forget about tariffs for a second. We're taking in tremendous amounts of money. Forget that. I don't want to do business. Now, when I raise and he raises, I raise and he raises, we can never catch up. We have to balance our trading relationship at least to an extent. And they were unwilling to do that. And we'll never have a deal if that happens, but it's going to happen because they have to have a deal. And as far as phone calls are concerned, Secretary of the Treasury and other people have been receiving many calls, not receiving, back and forth, many calls. China wants to make a deal, and if we can, we will make a deal. We'll see. Go ahead.
Mr. President, if I could ask you a little bit about your China strategy.
Yeah.
President Macron talked a little bit about instability and the worry in the markets and around the globe about instability. One of the things that comes from, as you talked to
You're talking about global economic instability?
Right.
I don't consider it instability, but that's
comes from is the back and forth and the changing statements from yourself, so that
sorry, it's the way I negotiate.
So my question is that a strategy? Is it a strategy to call President Xi an enemy one day and then say that relations are very good the next day, and then it's gone back?
The way I negotiate, it's done very well for me over the years, and it's doing even better for the country.
Could you talk a little bit about
I do think that. Look, here's the story. I have people say, "Oh, just make a deal, make a deal." They don't have the guts, and they don't have the wisdom to know that you can't continue to go on where a country is taking 500 billion, not million, 500 billion with a B, out every single year. $500 billion. You just can't do that. Somebody had to do this. This should have been done by President Obama. It should have been done, and Biden, Sleepy Joe. It should have been done by other people. It should have been done by Bush. It should have been done by Clinton. Double Bush. It should have been done. I'm doing it. Let me tell you something else. North Korea should have been done a long time ago. I'm doing it. I'm doing a lot of things that I shouldn't have to be doing. Please. Go ahead, please.
Beth Rigby, Sky News. President Trump, you've met our new Prime Minister Boris Johnson yesterday.
Yes.
You said he was the right man for the job on Brexit.
I believe that.
Do you think Theresa May was the wrong woman? And do you think that Boris Johnson can actually get a deal with the EU before October the 31st?
Well, Theresa was unable to do the deal. I gave her my ideas as to doing the deal very early on, and you possibly know what they are, but I would have done that. She chose to do it her way, and that didn't work out so well. I think she's a very, very good person and a good woman, and I really believe that Boris Johnson will be a great prime minister. We like each other, and we had a great 2.5 days. I've been waiting for him to be prime minister for about 6 years. I told him, what took you so long? I think he's going to be a great prime minister, and especially after spending a lot of intense time with him over the last couple of days. He's very smart, he's very strong, and he's very enthusiastic. And you know what else? he loves your country. He really loves your country. That came out maybe more than anything else. Yeah, please.
Vicky Young, BBC News. President Trump, Boris Johnson is very keen on a trade deal with the USA. You sound keen on it too. Some of his critics, though, are worried that you're going to do over the UK in that deal to protect American
I love the UK. I own great property in the UK. I love the UK. I have no idea how my property is doing because I don't care. But I own Turnberry, and I own in Aberdeen, and I own in Ireland, as you know, Doonbeg, and great stuff. And I'll be honest with you, I think he's going to just do a great job as prime minister. You know, it takes a lot. It's so many different elements to being a great prime minister. And you needed him. I just think his time is right. This is the right time for Boris. This is the right time for Boris. Yeah, please, go ahead. Go ahead, right here. Say who you're with, please.
Robert Peston from ITV in the UK as well. You've obviously had a good few days with President Macron, who you appear to be doing business with, to use your favourite expression. After Brexit, who do you think will be your more important relationship? President Macron, France and the EU, or Boris Johnson, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom?
I think we're going to have just, look, France is a great nation. It's being run, a lot of things are happening. You know, it's not easy what he's doing. He's changing certain ways. It's a very hard thing to do. I won't get into it. I'm going to let him sell his ideas, but a lot of people don't disagree with his ideas. But it's a very hard thing to do. If you're a great citizen of France, you love your country, but you want to do the way you've been doing it for a long time. But maybe that's not working, and maybe they have to do what he has to do. I think he's going to do a fantastic job, but it's very tough for him. I know how tough it is for him. He's been having a hard time, and nobody would have an easy time. But I do believe he's doing the right thing. Boris is different. It's a different kind of a deal. Boris has to try and do something with Brexit. It's very tough. I deal with the EU. The EU that's a very, very strong group of people. They have their ideas, and they're not easy to deal with, I will tell you. We're very close to making a deal, by the way, with the EU. I have to say this. We made a great deal with Japan, and we're very close to maybe making a deal with the EU because they don't want tariffs. It's very simple. They don't want to tax cars. Mercedes-Benz, BMW, they don't need a 20% or a 25% tax. But we're very close. I think we're going to make a deal with the EU without having to go that route. I may have to go that route, but maybe not. We're going to have a deal, a really fair deal, but the EU is another one. We've been losing $180 billion a year for many years. That's a lot of money. How much can you take out of the piggy bank, right?
But which alliance will be more important, with the EU or with Britain?
Both. I don't want to say which. Look, I think we have been with, I guess it would start off by saying England, right? You know, I asked Boris, where's England? What's happening with England? They don't use it too much anymore. We talked about it. It was very interesting. But the United Kingdom is a great, incredible place. It's an incredible nation. And it's, you know, been one of our tremendous allies. And another one happens to be Australia. He was here also, Scott. He is fantastic. In fact, we're honoring him in Australia at the White House in a very short period of time. But I think that, excuse me? Will you visit Australia? At some point I will, yeah. At some point I will. Also Germany. Angela asked me to visit Germany. We're going to be doing that too. So I just think they're very different. And they're going to be going at it for a little while, but ultimately probably it works out. They may have to get out. They may not make a deal. The European Union is very tough to make deals with. Very, very tough. Just ask Theresa May.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ziegler with the Associated Press. I was hoping you could clarify. Last year, you left this summit in Canada, feuding with the summit host. This year, things seem to be a little bit different. You're talking about unity, had a hug with President Macron on the stage. What is different? And also, as President Macron said, he's passing you the baton now of leading this multilateral institution. You ran on the platform of America First. What is your now that you have a mandate for the international community, what are you going to do with it? Well, we actually had a very good meeting. I had it out with one or two people where we disagreed in terms of concept, but we actually had a pretty good meeting last year. I would say that this was a big step above in terms of unity, in terms of agreement. We have
really great agreement on a lot of very important subjects. But last year was good also. I mean, last year was good also. I think last year might have been a little bit underrated. You know, go ahead, please.
In terms of the G7 presidency, what do you want to do with it? What's your agenda?
Oh, we're going to do something hopefully special. We're going to build on what we have now. We built on something really good. We're going to be going in with some great unity. We really did. If there was any word for this particular meeting of 7 very important countries, it was unity. I think most important of all, we got along great. We got along great. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm Qing Yichang with Shanghai Media Group. You just mentioned that Chinese Vice Premier Liu He said China is willing to resolve this issue through calm negotiations.
No, I didn't say it. He did.
Yes.
Yeah.
And will the U.S. negotiate in the same manner?
Yes.
And also, so the other issue, the other question.
That was an easy answer.
So the U.S. will negotiate in the same manner with
Absolutely. Great respect for China, great respect for the leadership of China. Absolutely.
And also the other question is that you say you definitely will invite Putin to join next year's summit.
I haven't said that, but I think that having President Putin in what was the G8, he was a member of the G8, and I heard he was a good member of the G8. Having him in, I think, is more of an advantage. I think it's a positive for the world. I think it's a positive for Russia. I think it's a big positive for Russia. And it's something the group is discussing. They are discussing it.
But just a few hours ago.
People feel very much like me, many people. What?
But just a few hours ago, Russian foreign minister is saying that it's not their foreign policy pursuit to return G8. What's your reaction?
Well, you know, we'll see. I know one thing. If they were invited back, I think they'd be there. If they weren't, that's okay too. I just think they'd be better inside than outside. I mean, as I said before, I really do. I think they'd be an asset. I think it would be a good thing. You know, some of the things, we were going in the room, and yesterday in particular, we were discussing 4 or 5 matters, and Russia was literally involved in all of those 4 or 5 matters. And a few of the people looked up and said, you know, why aren't they here talking to us about it? What are we going to do now, go home? Take it easy for a day, although I'm not doing that. I don't take it easy. But we're going to go home and start calling them at the end of the week and say, hey, how about this? Could have been in the room. We had numerous things that we were discussing, right? Numerous. We had a lot of things that we were discussing, and it would have been very easy if Russia was in the room. If he was in the room, we could have solved those things. Now they're just in limbo. But I have to say, with all of that, very little in limbo. But somebody will speak to him about some things, and frankly, they're not very complicated. But it would be easier if they were in the room.
Thank you so much.
Josh, go ahead. Josh.
Mr. President, there was a significant talk at the summit about climate change. I know in the past you've harbored some skepticism of the science and climate change. What do you think the world should be doing about climate change, and do you still harbor that skepticism?
I feel that the United States has tremendous wealth. The wealth is under its feet. I've made that wealth come alive. We will soon be exporting. In fact, we're actually doing it now, exporting. But we are now the #1 energy producer in the world, and soon it will be by far, with a couple of pipelines that have not been able to get approved for many, many years. It'll have a huge impact. I was able to get ANWR in Alaska. It could be the largest site in the world for oil and gas. I was able to get ANWR approved. Ronald Reagan wasn't able to do it. Nobody was able to do it. They've been trying to do it since before Ronald Reagan. I got it approved. We're the #1 energy producer in the world. Soon it will be by far the #1. It's tremendous wealth, and LNG is being sought after all over Europe and all over the world, and we have more of it than anybody else. And I'm not going to lose that wealth. I'm not going to lose it on dreams, on windmills, which, frankly, aren't working too well. I'm not going to lose it. So, Josh, in a nutshell, I want the cleanest water on earth. I want the cleanest air on earth. And that's what we're doing. And I'm an environmentalist. A lot of people don't understand that. I have done more environmental impact statements probably than anybody that's, I guess I can say definitely, because I've done many, many, many of them, more than anybody that's ever been president or vice president or anything even close to president. And I think I know more about the environment than most people. I want clean air, I want clean water, I want a wealthy country, I want a spectacular country with jobs, with pensions, with so many things, and that's what we're getting. So I want to be very careful. At the same time, you weren't called. At the same time, it's very important to me, we have to maintain this incredible place that we've all built. We've become a much richer country, and that's a good thing, not a bad thing, because that great wealth allows us to take care of people. We can take care of people that we couldn't have taken care of in the past because of the great wealth. We can't let that wealth be taken away. Clean air, clean water. Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Climate change, Mr. President. You didn't answer the question as to whether you